Hi, welcome back to the shed for episode 4 of the Stratocaster build, where we're going to move the body towards completion by cutting the contours onto the front and the back of it. As you can see, summer's finally landed here, so it's quite warm in the shop today, and this is quite heavy work, so there's a fair chance I'll be a big fat sweaty mess by the end of it. Last time we got the body cut out and most of the round over work done, which means the last couple of bits we need to get done before the body's completed is to put the arm cut on this top corner, the belly cut on the back, and get the neck pocket routed out. And that's what we're going to be covering in this episode. However, there is one little thing we do need to do before we get going with that, and that's to sort out this little dent that I've managed to put in next to the output jack. Now, as somebody quite rightly pointed out in the last episode, that's going to get covered by the jack plate, which brings me on to another subject, because I have had some new pieces arrive for this build, one of which is the jack plate, and as you can see, it does just about cover that dent. However, the last thing that I want a few years down the line is for some other luthier to take that jack plate off when they're doing some repairs on this guitar and see a great big dent under there and think, what a hack that bloke must have been. So we will try and get that out as best we can. But before we do that, I have had a few more pieces arrive. So we've now got a pick guard. We'll just try that with the tremolo in position. I've got some kind of aged white knobs with the gold lettering on, which I think will look absolutely lovely on there. The pick guard itself is a parchment coloured one, so it's off-white, so it won't look new by any stretch of the imagination, but I didn't really want to go for like a mint green or anything pick guard on this one. I've also got the knob that was missing off the switch. However, this one doesn't seem to fit on the switch at the moment, so I might just have to tweak it a little bit to get it to fit, but that's also kind of an aged colour. I've also got the cover plate for the rear, and that's matching as well. Pickups are on the way, and I think pretty much that is the last thing we need for this build, because the truss rod has also arrived, and as is pretty standard for me, it's a wheel adjust truss rod, and that will be adjusted from the heel end of the neck to make things easy. So we'll just get all of this back off again, and we'll have a look and see what we can do about this little dent. And what we're going to do here is introduce some moisture to this little section of the body, and then introduce some heat to it. And what I hope will happen is that the moisture will soak in, and then as I heat it, that moisture will expand and just help those fibres in the wood to kind of puff back out again. I don't think I'll get all of it, but as this is getting painted as well, we'll be able to kind of get quite a bit of paint into that area and then smooth it out, and hopefully we'll get rid of that. Now, normally for these kind of things I use an old clothes iron, but I think for this kind of very small area, I'm just going to use the tip of my soldering iron on top of some wet tissue, and hopefully that way I won't scorch the wood, but I will be able to put enough heat in there to just pop those fibres back out again. And I'm going to say that that's worked really, really well. It hasn't taken it all out, but it's taken the vast majority of it out. And I'm pretty sure if I kind of was to sand on that just a little bit more, we're almost at the point where that's disappeared now. And I think that is close enough now that when we get a decent amount of paint on there, we'll lose that in the flattening and polishing process. And I think that demonstrates one of the beautiful things about wood, there is usually something you can do to fix your cock-ups. And with the application of a little bit of heat and moisture, it actually can be quite a malleable material. So happy that that's fixed, so we can zoom back out and have a look at those body contours. And for some people this is actually quite an easy thing to do if you've got the right equipment, because there's a fairly simple jig that you can make that you can attach your body into and then run it through the bandsaw at a certain angle, and it will take off the material for both this arm contour and the belly contour on the back. However, my bandsaw is nowhere near big enough for that, so we're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, which in the first instance for this arm contour just means sticking the template back on and just squaring a couple of lines down from it, which we can then join up with a straight edge. And that will give us one of the markings that we need to cut this away. The second one is obviously on the side of the guitar, so I've done a little bit of measuring, and that one is about 16 mil from the back face of the guitar. So I'm just going to set up a marking gauge, 16 mil. I'm just going to put a very slight mark in there, and then I'll just use that to put a rough line around there. And simply all I'm going to do is just take this material away with a plane in straight line until we get down to that line there. It's going to be a lot of planing, but this material is quite soft, so I think it will go relatively quickly. Okay, so that's the bulk of that material taken off. It didn't go too badly actually. It took probably about 20 minutes of planing, which has given me my workout for the day, if nothing else. So next up we need to kind of blend this in a little bit and just give it a very nice, subtle, delicate curve just in that one direction there. And also we need to just put that round over back in onto the edge. So I'll do that first. I'll get it in the vise and just get a carving file on it and just kind of eyeball that radius in for now, and then we can refine it with sandpaper and stuff a little bit later on. Okay, so there's the arm cut done. We might need a little bit of final sanding around this edge, but we need to bear in mind that we're now going to be taking out a fair amount of material from there, so I'm going to leave that as it is for now, but I'm very happy with that. It's blended in nicely, it's nice and smooth, and hasn't caused any issues with the wood, which is amazing. So next up we need to get this spun over, get the template back on the job, but this time we need to do something that's kind of a little bit more involved to get the shape that we want. Because unlike the front contour, this one on the back is a curve, and handily it's actually on the opposite side of the template just to make things even harder. So what I'm going to have to do is use this as a guide to create a paper template that we can then position on the body to give us the shape that we need to cut out. And then, as you might have seen me do before, I will put saw cuts all the way through here to kind of break the waste up, and then just remove the bulk of it with a chisel, and then go back into it with spoke shave or carving files just to get the shape that we want somewhere near, and then we'll just go in with the electric sander and get that finished off. So first things first, get some tracing paper out and make a copy of that line. Okay, so that's a rough kind of guide of where I'm going to take material out. And next up I'm going to take one of my little pull saws and I'm going to cut slots kind of close to but not up to these lines, so that I'm kind of breaking that waste up a little bit, and then I'll just go in with a chisel in the first instance, hack out most of that, and then go in with finer tools like a spoke shave, probably carving files, that sort of thing, just to kind of get this close to where I want it. And then I'll break out the orbital sander and just clean that into the shape that we actually want. And that's all of those cuts put in place. It didn't really take that long. The saw is nice and sharp and cuts through this like butter. I've got a freshly sharpened chisel, so hopefully that will help me. And I've done a little bit of a test there because I've not really used this wood an awful lot, so I'm not sure how well it's going to split, but it seems to be splitting quite nicely and fairly uniformly. So I'm going to start working my way through this, just chipping out this waste. Until we get to the point where we can use some more refined tools to just carve that shape in to exactly how we need it. Okay, so I'm getting to the point now, you can perhaps see it down here, where I'm getting past the little saw cuts that I put in, which means I'm getting down to the depth that I want. So I'm going to move away from the chisel, and I've got myself a nice little spoke shave to use. And importantly, this one has got a curved sole on it, not a flat sole, so it will get into that scooped out section of the wood quite nicely. And as always, I'm going to put a bit of wax on the sole there to help lubricate it, and just start working my way through and taking that material down until we're taking out all of those little saw cuts. And this is where feel for the wood really starts to come in as well, because I can feel in this little bit here, it's actually cutting quite nicely. But as I move past from about here, it's starting to judder and tear a little bit. So that's telling me that I'm better off coming from the other direction. And then it's starting to judder on this bit. So perhaps, again, we need to change what we're doing. And just like that, there is the vast majority of that work done. And I think that's gone very, very nicely. You might have noticed I went to the card scraper for some of those bits, just because the grain did seem to be moving around a little bit. So the card scraper doesn't really care about grain direction, and just cleaned that up nicely. And then I went to the DA sander and just kind of cleaned that up. That's only sanded to about 120 because I wanted to keep everything nice and straight. So I'll go back over that with some finer paper at some point in the future. But we're not quite done yet because we need to now re-establish our round over on this section. And for me as well, the interplay between the back and the front contours on a Strat really do kind of make the look of the thing. So it might be the case that I actually bring this line a little bit further down, just so it reflects the way that the front face flows into that contour. So we'll get this in the vise and we'll just do this with a carving file and some sandpaper. And hopefully you can see what I mean there, the way that those two contours now kind of mirror each other as they go through. It's probably still a little bit more work I could do there just to make that absolutely perfect, but that's more for the finishing stage than what we're doing now. So I'm going to call that bit done for the time being, which also means it's probably a good time to bring this episode to a close. I know I had said that I wanted to get the neck pocket cut in this episode, but time's just got away from me. But all in all, I am super happy with the progress that I've made. I think these contour cuts have come out very, very nicely. And for a little bit of finish sanding, we are where we need to be with them. Which means the body is very, very nearly done. So join me again in a few days' time when we will get the neck pocket cut. I think we'll probably do a kind of a full trial build of the body just to make sure everything is in the right place before we go any further, and then we can start thinking about doing the neck. So until then, don't forget to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.